Active learning, the research on teaching and learning tells us, is the key to mastery of all subjects. Learners actively engaged with content have greater potential because the brain that does the work is the brain that does the learning. Blended classes allow students to explore topics before live sessions. At any time or place, students can ground themselves in the week's materials. They prime themselves so that they can take full advantage of active, engaged learning activities in class meetings. In this lecture, we'll explore how to use class meetings for active learning. What is active learning? Active learning is engaged learning. At its core, active learning engages students with each other, with the content, and with you as the instructor. Active learning and blended course design are a perfect match. Mainly because in a blended course design, students complete asynchronous content before coming to class, which frees up time in class for you to engage with students, for students to apply the content that they've learned, and for students to interact with each other and with the content in real time. Planning and facilitating active learning can seem challenging, especially if you're new to it. But we have 3 tips to help get you started. The first is to set expectations. Let your students know that you're hoping that they will engage with each other and engage with you and with the content in active ways. The next is to model that behavior and to do it right from the very first day, to start your class off with opportunities or strategies that get students talking to one another and get their minds working actively about the content. One way to do this is to create prompts for you as the instructor and also for your students. The prompts for you can be really valuable opportunities to remind yourself to pause, give students an opportunity to discuss and engage. And the prompts for students can be really powerful ways for them to connect what's happening in class with the content that they might have completed asynchronously before coming to the class session. There are lots of other active learning techniques and strategies that you can try. Debates is a really popular opportunity where you ask students to choose a side or multiple sides of an issue and then offer evidence or argumentation to help them more fully engage with the content. Next would be simulation or role play. And then finally, polling, which can be very valuable in a blended classroom, especially if some of your students are joining via Zoom. You can collect low-stakes feedback about their understanding, or even ask students to vote about particular content or issues as a way of fostering discussion. Student presentations are another really wonderful opportunity for active learning in classes of any size. As the instructor, you'll want to set some ground rules so that students understand what's expected of them. But once you've done that, letting students take the reins and become active agents in their own educations can be very empowering. If you're in large classes or classes where students work together frequently, options for group presentations can be a really wonderful way to make connections between those opportunities. If you're new to active learning or you're facilitating active learning on Zoom for the very first time, one way to set yourself up for success is to create a flight plan or a schedule of the activities that you're hoping students will engage with throughout the course session. You might consider things like planned presentations from students, asking students to work in breakout groups and then report back to the larger class, or opportunities for polling. Since you'll be asking students to work together, developing community agreements about how students engage with one another in a respectful, inclusive way is really an important move that you'll want to do early in this class session and then remind students about these agreements over the course of the semester. Active learning on Zoom can look a lot of ways. One of the most common, again, is discussions. Having live discussion with your students is a great way to determine, are they getting it? Do they have questions about content that they covered before coming to class? Or you might even build on the online discussions that happened asynchronously and bring those into the live class session. Another opportunity is role play. Depending on your content, you might ask students to adopt particular roles of characters or sides of a debate and engage with one another as a learning technique. And then finally, polling. Again, it's a great way to conduct low-stakes assessments to make sure that students are following you along the course of the content and that they're getting it. Finally, breakout rooms are a really great opportunity for students to work together, trying and testing the boundaries of their learning, asking questions that they might be a little shy or reticent to ask in the large group classes, and then coming back together, reporting out, and sharing and debriefing their smaller conversations. Just like you intentionally focused on your instructor presence in courseworks, you'll also want to consider your instructor presence on Zoom. Arriving a few minutes early to the class gives students an opportunity to join you, have casual conversation about your weekend or about the last movie you saw, or even ask questions about course content. It intentionally replicates those very happenstance moments that you might have with students in a face-to-face environment that helps them connect with you and get to know you as a person. You also might consider facilitating community building early and often. A lot of instructors focus on community building strategies early in the semester as students are just getting to know each other. But community building is something that happens across the course of the semester. So giving students an opportunity to engage with you and with each other in a way that helps to cultivate a really positive, inclusive learning community is very powerful for students' overall success. The chat function on Zoom can be a really lovely way for students who might be shy, they might not feel comfortable taking the mic and asking a question. This is a great way for them to ask questions or contribute to the online class discussion without doing so in such a visible way. Finally, inviting students to use emojis or the raising hand function gives students another opportunity to connect with you, to ask a question, or to even respond to the things that you're saying. I've seen lots of instructors say, include the heart emoji if this is really going well for you, or you might include the laughing emoji if something is confusing. And that's a signal to you as the instructor that you're willing to pause, slow down, and go over some content again. Virtual community building on Zoom can build on the community building you began asynchronously in courseworks. You might consider icebreaker activities, either in the large group setting or in breakout rooms, that help students get to know each other. In breakout rooms, students can talk in more intimate groups, and it helps them to make connections. Finally, you might discuss with your students the options to have your camera on or camera optional times. Turning on the camera in a Zoom session is always an invitation, but it can be very helpful for students if you explain why at this particular moment it might be really valuable for them to have their camera on, versus if you're sharing screen or going over slides, that could be an opportunity for them to take a little Zoom break, cut down on Zoom fatigue, and turn off their camera. In breakout rooms, you could ask students to do a variety of things. Popular options include 1-minute presentations, where students talk about readings or a video they might have watched or a particular concept from the asynchronous content and provide a 1-minute presentation to their peers and get feedback. You could also ask students to do very quick problem analyses. It might be something that builds on the asynchronous content, and you provide them with a small case or a particular opportunity to think through in community with one another. HyFlex, which stands for Hybrid Flexible, is sometimes simply referred to as hybrid instruction. It's a methodology that includes both face-to-face students who join in person in the classroom with the instructor, as well as students who join the class via Zoom. Both in-person and on Zoom students come together to form one HyFlex learning experience. HyFlex is a fantastic promise to expand access because students can choose the method and modality of joining a class session that works best for them. It is one potential digital dividend of the COVID-19 pandemic because instructors and students alike were forced to use tools that they might never have considered before. And as a result, institutions have tech-enabled classrooms to help facilitate this type of engagement. There are indeed technical and teaching challenges. It is not harder necessarily than traditional face-to-face teaching, but it is different. And planning intentionally to address these challenges is one way to set yourself up for success. Success in HyFlex teaching requires teaching with technology. Classrooms are enabled with different types of technologies that enable students who are in the room to hear and see the students who are joining via Zoom. Additionally, both groups of students can hear and see the instructor. You might think of it like a live TV show with multiple audiences. Training, coordination, and practice with your TA can be essential. But if you don't have a TA, don't worry, not all is lost. You can enlist members of your course community to help monitor chat. You can pre-plan when you facilitate active learning strategies and where you might move in and out of the camera view. It is certainly possible as a learning community to facilitate HyFlex instruction. When it comes to HyFlex decisions, there are some choices to be made. One of the first questions that arises is what percentage of your students will be in class and what percentage will be remote? In some instances, students choose how they engage, whether they will come to class or whether they will join remotely. In other instances, institutions or schools or departments make that choice. Whichever way it happens for you, the number of students you have in class versus the number of students who are joining you remotely will greatly influence the ways that you engage with the technology and your face-to-face students. For example, if you have the majority of your students in the classroom and you're hoping to facilitate a discussion, you might ask in-class students to bring their laptops and headsets so that they can engage with discussion with students who are joining remotely via Zoom. When it comes to HyFlex instruction, one of the most important things to keep in mind is that you want to create an equitable learning experience between the students who are joining via Zoom and the students who are joining in class. Incorporating remote learners into the in-class session is really important so that they don't feel isolated or left out. Using the gallery view feature on Zoom on a monitor in class allows all of the students who are joining face-to-face or in person to see all of the students who are joining online. It can be a really wonderful way to build community between these two sets of learners. You might also ask in-class students to bring devices and headsets so that they can either partner with students who are joining via Zoom or engage in in-class or breakout room discussions with them. Finally, you might pin particular speakers on Zoom using that particular feature so that the students who are joining via Zoom can see the students who are speaking at that moment in class.